Rising from, hang on, let me poke the button. The Shisha arising from Samadhi in beautiful poetry expresses his experience of self-realization. And again, this does not define it, points, but they're beautiful, beautiful verses that give us a taste of what the experience of the person of wisdom is like. Now we start the last major section, I think it's 57 verses if I recall, of the final advice of the Guru to the disciple. So Ganesh, would you help us out? What verse are we starting on? Do you know, Justin?
Section 75, the very beginning of it, 521, I believe.
521.
Ti natamavalokyya shishyavaryan samadhikatatma sukham prabuddhatattvam pramudita hridayah sa deshikendraha punaridam aha vachah param mahatma. Seeing that the worthy student has gained the bliss of the Atman, is enlightened, and is prostrating, the noble teacher, being glad at heart, again spoke these supreme words.
Yes. So the Guru can tell when the mind of the student is awakened and can abide in the self. It doesn't matter what you say. Oh, I've had this experience of blah, 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 blah. It's very obvious when someone knows, because this holding in the mind is gone. There's a difference. So the Guru sees, this person is now a knower of Brahman. So let's see what the advice to the disciple is. Going on.
Brahma pratyaya santatihi jagadato brahmaiva tatsarvatah pashyadhyatmadrisha prashanta manasa sarvasva vastharasvapi rupadanyadvekshitam kimabhitascha shushmatam vidyate tadvad brahmavidah satah kimaparam buddhir viharaspadam. An unbroken series of perceptions of Brahman is this universe.
Hang on. I didn't hear you. Have to speak a little louder.
An unbroken series of perceptions of Brahman is this universe. So in every respect, it is nothing but Brahman. In all conditions, see this with a vision of illumination and a serene mind. Is it ever possible that he who has eyes can see anything other than forms all around? Yes. So too, what is there to engage the intellect of a realized man, save Brahman?
So, for the person of wisdom, the jnani, this world is just a numerous series of impressions that pass in front of me. And they're like a movie, they're like a hologram. Pretty to look at, but nothing but consciousness appearing as name and form. So the person of wisdom sees the same world as you and I, but does not see the same world that you and I see. One person sees the mirage waters on the desert and their knowledge is water. Another sees the same thing, but their knowledge is an optical illusion, heat waves off the sand. So the person of wisdom moves in the world, but it no longer has the power to grab them and attract them or cause them great sorrow. Always with a serene mind. Don't get caught up in it. Next verse.
Kastam paranandarasānubhūtihi mutsrijya Kastam paranandarasānubhūtimutsrijya Shunyeshu rameta vidvan Chandre mahahradini Deepyamane Chitrendu malo kaitum kaichet. Which wise man would relinquish reveling in supreme bliss for the enjoyment of paltry things? And the greatly enchanting moon is shining. Who would wish to gaze upon a painted moon?
Yes. So, if, as the Sufis say, the Jnani has the taste, can do what we call Atmaramana, can revel in the self, why would that person extrovert the mind and lose that for paltry things, for trinkets and baubles, for pieces of glass masquerading as gems? Come home. Next verse.
Asat padarthanubhavena kinchin hyasti vrittirna cha dukkhahanihi tadvadvayanandarasanubhutya tripta sukham tishtha sadatmanishtaya. In the perception of objects unreal, there is neither the slightest contentment nor the cessation of misery. Therefore, content in the realization of the essence of non dual bliss, remain happy, ever identified with the self.
So don't be sloppy. Let your mind extrovert into the self, or extrovert into the objects. Stay home. Now, there's no end to how deeply the mind can revel in the self. That too is infinite. It's never boring, it's ever new. waves and waves of bliss. Next verse.
Swameva sarvartha pashyan manyamana swamadavyam swanandam anubhunjana kalam nayamahamate. O noble one, beholding the self, always contemplating upon the self, which is non-dual, and enjoying the bliss of the self, you should spend your time.
So, this awareness of the self in the mind overwhelms everything else. That's what the yogi, the jnani, spends their time doing. Now, to the world, they may still conduct what we call vyavahara, transactions. Go to work, do the dishes, do the laundry, spend time with your partner, all those ordinary things. Inside, there's another playground. Another playground. Again, I go back to what Gita says. What is day to the yogi is night to all others. And what is day to all others is night for the yogi. Meaning, for the person of wisdom, no longer does the world have any real attraction. Whereas for the worldly people, the normies, oh, this is serious business. And for the jnani, there's this whole other playground, this deep, deep peace and bliss. People out there in the world, they don't even know it exists. If you say something like, I don't have any desires anymore, that thing is dead inside me, they won't believe you. Oh, you're faking that. That's a bunch of bullshit. Of course you've got desires. Everybody's got desires. But you know if it's gone. Next one.
Akhanda bodhatmani nirvikalpe vikalpanam vyomina pura prakalpanam tadvadvayanandam ayatmana sada shanti parametya bhajasva maunam. In the unbroken knowledge, the absolute, the Atman, dualistic conceptions are like castles in the air. Therefore, attaining supreme peace, live in silence, identifying yourself with the non-dual bliss absolute.
So it's this unbroken knowledge of the self. What do we mean by that? It doesn't mean you run around all day going, I am the self, I am the self, I am the self. No. The image that Ramana Maharshi used to use is just as during the day you don't doubt whether your body is human. You don't think, am I a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig? It just doesn't happen. It's unbroken knowledge. So also for the jnani. When are you ever not you? That's why when someone says, oh, I had an experience of the self, Jim, but I lost it, then they haven't had it. They don't get it yet. You can't lose yourself. It's always there. Always there. And as St. Francis used to say, wherever you go, preach the gospel. And if you must, use words. There is nothing more damaging to another person you may know who's an inquirer for you to say the words of Vedanta and then just be a jerk, full of desire, full of aversion, full of control. Keep your mouth shut and be the knowledge in the world. And if it's authentic, then people will say, what's going on with you? You've changed. You're different. I want what you have. Then pour out the knowledge. Next one,
Jim, can I ask a question?
please.
So, when you're in a healthy mind space or physical space and you've been learning Vedanta, and instead of using you, I'll just say I find that I am able to use what I've learned. It's sort of, it's automatic intervention with my thoughts these days, if you hear Vedanta enough. But then
Mm-hmm.
um, when you have physical fatigue or spiritual fatigue, it's not easy to practice Vedanta when that happens. Do you have any advice for that? Like you know, when,
Absolutely. If you go way back in this text to our teaching on the gunas, remember the gunas, tamas, rajas, sattva. So if you're physically in pain or fatigued and your mind is fatigued and you don't feel very spiritual, then you may be predominantly tamasic. What do we do to treat a tamasic mind? We stimulate it with rajas. So do the dishes, fold some laundry, go for a walk, or best, do service. Take an interest in another human being. Call up a friend and say, you know, you were in my thoughts. How are you? What's going on with you? Then shut your mouth and listen. Serve another person. This will move the mind from tamas into rajas. Or, you know, the old joke, when the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. For many of us, that's a way to get the mind out of tamas. It seems counterintuitive. Oh, I thought I'm supposed to renounce all this stuff. You can't do that with a tamasic mind. Tamas moves into rajas. Then when the mind is rajasic, renouncing attachment, renouncing identification, letting go of all this stuff, ego-prompted activity. Move the mind into sattva. You can't go from tamas straight into sattva. Doesn't work. Excellent question. And every yogi faces it.
Thanks, Jim.
Was that helpful?
Yes. Thanks.
It's hard to do yoga if your body's not, behaving. Health is the greatest wealth. And the paradox is you don't realize its value till you lose it. Young people take it completely for granted. But as we get a little bit older, then, the body parts start to fall off. And all of a sudden, if you've been a yogi, it will help you accept it and be present to it, not let it affect you. But if you're a beginner, it's hard. It's hard. And if you're lethargic and tired, lie down. It's okay. No rules. The yogi quits shoulding on herself. Oh, I should be doing this. I should be getting something accomplished. I should be productive. Anybody have that voice going on in their head? You don't should on yourself. First of all, it never motivates you to do anything. It just makes you feel like crap. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And whatever mind state you're in, I promise you, it will pass. Has to. It's a manifested thing. It cannot endure. It cannot. If you wait long enough, it'll pass. Now, mind you, this instruction is for the person who knows their self-nature, who spontaneously, without effort, abides in the self. Not for those of us who are still doing jnana abhyas, practicing knowledge.
You mean the instructions in the current chapter in Viveka Chudamani, right? Like the stuff.
I do. Yeah. Remember where we are in our story. If you aren't there yet, it's okay, no blame. You know what we're going to do when we finish the last shloka, don't you?
Chant the first one.
You got it. Why do we do that? Because we start all over again. Start all over again. Any other questions? What's so beautiful about this book is if you back up, you'll find the answer to almost all of your spiritual questions. And it may not have been relevant at the time when we went through it, but it's there. If we go back and review it, go through it again. I'm actually doing Viveka Chudamani with a student. We're working one-on-one. This is his second time through the book. He did it the first time all by himself. Speed reading. He was going to get it fast. This time we're going slowly. And he's understanding so much more.
Didn't you say that it was the Gita as well as this book? Those are the two books you require?
The Gita is inexhaustible. You can go through Gita for your entire life and never plumb her depths.
No.
Inexhaustible. inexhaustible. Most of these scriptures are like that. As we approach them from one place of our understanding, we get something out of it. But then when we come back and we're deeper in our understanding, it brings fresh things to us. That's its intent. That's the style. Maximum meaning with minimum words, as Swamiji used to say. All right, next verse.
Tushnim Paramopashantihi Buddherasatkalpa Vikalpa Hetoh Brahmatmana Brahmavido Mahatmano Yatradvayananda Sukham Nirantaram. The cause of all fancies, the mind, becomes perfectly serene to the sage who has known Brahman. Indeed, this is the state of quiescence in which, ever identified with Brahman, he constantly enjoys the non-dual bliss absolute.
So there's a wonderful image in Yoga Vasishta that I like. So for the ordinary person, they are like a person standing in the sun on the bank of a river, being roasted from head to foot. But for the jnani, it's like a person who's out there in the river, all the way up to their chest. And yes, the sun is shining down on their head and shoulders, but underneath the water, they're cool. So we may see the person of wisdom acting in the world, enjoying a meal, maybe being a little annoyed at traffic or something like that. Can't judge them. But for the person of wisdom, inside, silence. That was certainly true about Swamiji. Whatever was going on outside in the world, it was almost like he was a puppet. But if you tuned into what was behind all that, just empty, thunderous silence. Next verse.
Nasti nirvasanan maunat param sukha kruduttamam vijñātātmasvarūpasya swanandarasapāyinah. There's nothing more exhilarating than the quiescence which comes from being free of vasanas, to him who has known his own nature and who drinks the bliss of the self.
So again, what are the two powers of a vasana? Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. Avarana Shakti, covering or veiling power, which means I have the non-apprehension of my self-nature. Vikshepa Shakti, the mind projects ego sense, the belief of a world in name and form separate from me, and the need to struggle. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if. That's the Vikshepa Shakti, the projecting power, the agitating power. So when the mind is free from vasana, I do not forget that I am Brahman. And I'm not fooled by the world. You decide that for yourself. So the inverse of this is also true. If I feel like a person, I'm deluded. If I'm deluded, I've got a Varana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. I'm going to think I'm a person, and ego is going to say, either fix the world or fix me. And that seems real. And yoga says, drop the struggle. Who am I? Let it go. All of a sudden, all the suffering goes. Oh, that's right. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Kacham tishtan upavishan chayano vanyathapi va yathechaya vasedvivanandatma rama sadamunihi. Whether going or staying, whether going or staying, sitting or lying down, or in any other state, the enlightened sage, whose sole pleasure is in the Atman, lives ever at ease.
So here, it doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter what we're doing. In the end, there are no rules for the jnani. No need to do ritual. No need to refrain from ritual. The jnani is out of control, operating in the world from this deep, intuitive place, always at peace with whatever happens. Next one.
Nadesha kala sanadigyamadihi lakshadhyapeksha pratibaddha vrittehe samsiddha tattvasya mahatmanosti swavedaneka niyamadyavastha. The sage who has perfect realization of truth and whose mind therefore encounters no obstruction, no more relies upon conditions of place, time, posture, direction, moral discipline, objects of meditation, etc. What formulae can there be for recognizing one's own self?
So the jnani has no need to meditate to achieve something. Now listen very carefully. The seeker is seen to do spiritual practices so that they may purify their equipment and realize the self. The jnani may be seen to be doing spiritual practice. But it does not add to their knowledge of the self. It's just the highest form of worldly pleasure. So, for example, in Swami Tapovanam's book, Wandering in the Himalayas, there's a section where he goes to the Sharada temple, which is now in northern Pakistan. Very, very famous Devi temple. Hung out with the Devi devotees there for days and days and days, singing the praises of the mother. Why? That's his idea of a good time. Man of wisdom may choose to go off and be silent, or learn a particular ritual or practice. Curiosity, joy of doing that. I've had several of my students who are pretty rooted and decided to take Vipassana retreats. And I usually ask a very interesting question when they come back. Do you know more self now? You see it or you don't. But was it enjoyable? Yeah. Did your mind get really empty and quiet? Mm-hmm. That's nice. Don't worry, it will pass. You'll get back into the workaday world and there'll be another mind state. Don't worry about it. The mind is no longer taken as anything particularly important or serious or real. It's not like an ordinary person's mind anymore. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Ghato yamiti vignatum niyama konvapekshate vina pramana sushtutvam yasmin sati padarthadhi. This is a jar. To know this, what condition is necessary? Save that the means of knowledge be without any defects, which alone ensures cognition of the object.
So it's very simple and direct. Do you see that red thing on the end table? Do you all see it?
Mm-hmm.
This is a glass of water. That's all that's necessary to know it. We indicate it, we tell you what it is. Likewise, you are not your body, you are not your feelings, you are not your thoughts. And in a quiet mind, in the space between your thoughts, with your attention introverted, see if you can notice who knows the thoughts and the space between the thoughts. You see, there's nothing there. That's yourself. It's the same as Brahman. Okay. It's that simple. if you let it be that simple. And then you have to watch out for that terrible demon called Yabut. Yeah, but what about this? Or yeah, but maybe I haven't reached Samadhi. But yeah, but when you quieten your mind, you look at the silence between your thoughts with your attention introverted. What's there? Do you see a little gray ball with wings? Do you see blinding light? What's there? Nothing. Yet it shines. It is the illuminator of everything. And it's me. Aham, aham, aham. Next verse.
अयमात्मा नित्यसिद्धः प्रमाणे सति भासते न देशं नापि वा कालं न शुद्धिं वाप्यपेक्षते. This Atman, which is an eternal truth, manifests itself in the presence of the right means of knowledge. It is dependent neither on place nor time nor outward purity.
So, with the right means of knowledge, pramana, this self manifests itself. It's always there. But for the ordinary person, it's obscured by ignorance and agitation, tamas and rajas, varana shakti and vikshepa. So, given the right means of knowledge, first, become a fit student, adhikari. Viveka, Vairagya are the most important. Now, when your mind is quiet enough to see what really is, who are you? Who is it who knows the self? Remember, it is the self itself that knows the self. You do not see, hear, taste, touch, or smell yourself. You don't feel yourself. You don't think yourself. Yet you know you are you. The self is its own means of knowledge. What we've done is just get rid of the distraction. What remains is me. And then the subtle intellect goes, oh, aham brahmasmi. I am that Brahman. Next verse.
देवदत्तोऽहमीत्येतद् विज्ञानं निरपेक्षकं तद्वद्ब्रह्मविदोऽप्यस्य ब्रह्माहमिति वेदनम्. I am Devadatta. This knowledge is independent of conditions. Similarly, the knower of Brahman realizes that he is Brahman.
So Devadatta is not only our friend who lives in Sebastopol, but it is used in the scriptures the way we use John Doe in modern parlance, or we say Jane Smith. It's a generic person. So just as you know, worldly, you are Aishani. Doesn't matter whether you're wearing a business suit with heels and your hair with earrings, or you're wearing traditional Indian dress, or you're wearing sweats and a t-shirt, or a bikini at the beach. You're still you. You're always you. If you're at home with family, if you're there with your boyfriend, if you're at work with your colleagues, if you're out at a club dancing, wherever you are, you're you. Likewise for the jnani. None of the externals matter. Censure or praise, youth, old age, conducive or non-conducive situation. I am always changeless ground of being. Always. Next one.
Bhananev jagat sarvam bhasate yasya tejasa anatmak kamasatucham kim nutasyava nutasyava bhasakam. What indeed can manifest? That whose effulgence, like the sun, caused the entire fallacious, unreal, and important universe to appear at all.
Yes. So there's nothing needed to make the self manifest. It's always there. Even if you have a crappy day. Who knew the crappy day? I did. Was your mind really funky in Tamasic? Yeah. Did you continue to exist? Yes. Did you illumine this funky mind? Yeah. When are you ever absent? You are the eternal constant. All you need to know about every mind state, without exception, is it's temporary. And this world is always in motion, always changing, like a kaleidoscope. Pretty to look at. None of it ever really touches you. Now, the jnani has to become a very skilled actor in the world. The world out there gets upset when the jnani speaks from a full state of yoga. It really agitates him. So the jnani becomes an actor. You behave in a way that's appropriate to circumstance. The jnani is comfortable, can be a thief among thieves, a worker among workers, a lover among lovers, family person among family person. You play your part in the drama of life. You don't go home and when your mother says, "Oh, I'm so worried about your sister, she's shooting heroin." Ah, it's all an illusion. It's just Maya passing in front of the self. Doesn't help anybody. Inside, you know that. Now, here's another secret. When friends or family members are around you and they're suffering, rather than you getting all engaged in their suffering, be attentive. You hold sacred space. Inside, you know, right where the trouble seems to be, there God. That person may think that what's going on is horrible and terrible, and I'm frightened, and they've done it all to me. But you know, Satchidananda Rupa. I am of the form of existence, consciousness, bliss, and so are they. Then you begin to become a healing presence in the world. So, one of my favorite authors was Joel Goldsmith, guy who was in the garment business in New York, a Jewish fellow, who had some deep experiences in Christian Science. This is in the very early 20th century. Somewhere along the line, he met an enlightened being. And I don't know what happened that he just obliquely writes about. But he talks about just walking down the sidewalk in New York and strangers coming up to him. I don't know who you are, but will you pray for me? Out of the blue! People doing this. I jokingly walk around and I tell people, well, I have a contagious case of health. Let's hug. Knowing that if you hold sacred space, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to people. They do not need to hear words. Words are stupid. He says, having talked for an hour. This is for those who have ears to hear. who know how to hold that sacred space. All right, next one.
Vedashastra-Puranani Bhutani Sakalanyapi Yenarthavanti tam kinnu Vijñātāram prakāṣayet. That by which all Vedas, Shastras, and Puranas, and all other beings are endowed with meaning. Verily, what can illumine their eternal subject?
So all of our sacred scriptures, which we think of as our authorities, the Vedas, for the Jnani, their authority is their own direct experience. They can unfold any scripture. It's like this. So if a Martian came down and met you, Aishani, and said, I've been reading Earth books about human beings, and I've been seeing all these creatures in artwork with 4 arms, and all these things in their heads. Do humans have 4 arms, Aishani? Do they?
No,
How do you know this?
because I am one.
Did you have to read books about anatomy? Does a human's heart exist on their shoulder? Are you sure? Where is it? Right here, I feel it. So you need no book to explain this. It's your own direct experience. Likewise for the Jnani. It's very easy for them to help resolve the doubts of the student, rooted in their own direct experience. You've become an Upanishad. Next one.
Esha Swayam Jyotihi Ananta Shaktihi Atma Prameya Sakalanubhutihi Yameva Vijnaya Vimukta Bandho Chayatyayam Brahma Viduttamaha. Here is the self-effulgent Atman of endless power, beyond all conditioned knowledge, yet the direct experience of all. Freed from bondage, realizing this alone, the best among the knowers of Brahman lives his life of victory.
So remember, when you realize the self in you, you realize the self in everyone. Oh, I know that myself is Brahman. Yourself is a pig. Yourself is a cow. No. Everyone has a body. Our bodies are different. Everyone has an emotional life. Our feelings are different. Everyone has ideas. Our thoughts are different. But the conscious being that you are, that illumines your body, mind, intellect, Satchidananda, and the conscious being in everyone that illumines their equipment is the same. So when you realize yourself You realize the self in everyone. Myself is Brahman. His self is a demon. No. No. And as you look into someone's eyes, there's a being looking out. Who's looking out of your eyes? It's Brahman. Guess who's looking out of theirs? Only the drag is different. Person, Purusha, is the same. What number are we on, Ganesh?
We are on 536.
All right. I think this is a good place to stop tonight. It's very, very rich.
That was 536, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just
So
finished.
the next one's 537. Okay, yeah.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.